At her granddaughter's wedding, Evelyn Carter reached for her name tag and felt her chest tighten. Instead of her name, it read, "The old lady who's paying for everything." The room laughed as if it were a harmless joke, but Evelyn knew better. That cruel card was more than an insult. It was the crack that would expose her family's darkest truth, the name tag of shame. The morning of Sophie's wedding felt like a dream. Evelyn Carter stood before the mirror in her bedroom, carefully adjusting the pale blue dress she had chosen for the occasion. It was a dress her late husband Robert had always admired, and even though he had been gone for 3 years, she wanted to feel as if he were still by her side. She touched her silver hair, sprayed the perfume he had once gifted her, and whispered softly, "You'd be proud of me today, Robert." At 65, Evelyn carried herself with quiet dignity. She believed weddings were sacred, moments of joy where families came together in celebration. Today was supposed to be one of those moments, but she did not yet know how quickly it would turn into a day she would never forget. The ceremony at St. Matthew's Church was beautiful. Sophie looked radiant walking down the aisle, her smile glowing brighter than the morning sun. Evelyn's heart swelled with pride. Thomas, her son, escorted Sophie proudly, while Rachel dabbed at her eyes as if overcome by emotion. For a brief time, Evelyn allowed herself to believe this was the family she had always dreamed of, united, grateful, and full of love. But that dream began to crack the moment she arrived at the reception. The grand ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel sparkled with golden lights, and guests lined up to collect their name tags at the check-in table. Evelyn smiled warmly at the young woman handing them out. "Mrs. Carter?" the girl said cheerfully, sliding a card into Evelyn's hand. Evelyn glanced down, expecting to see her name in elegant print. Instead, the words nearly made her heart stop. "The old lady who's paying for everything." Her hand froze. Surely this was a mistake. Her cheeks burned with shame as she read the cruel sentence again. The girl noticed her hesitation. "Oh, is something wrong?" Evelyn forced a smile. "It must be a little mix-up." But when the girl leaned over and saw it herself, her eyes widened in shock. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Carter. Do you want me to find another one?" "No, it's fine," Evelyn said quickly, her voice trembling but determined not to make a scene. "I'll speak to my family about it." She pinned the offensive tag to her dress, though it felt like a heavy stone on her chest. As she entered the ballroom, whispers followed her like shadows. Evelyn tried to ignore them, but then she overheard a guest snicker. "Did you see her tag?" Rachel said it would be hilarious. Another voice replied with a chuckle. "Well, she is their personal ATM." Evelyn's stomach twisted. She moved away before anyone could see the tears forming in her eyes. Later, Thomas introduced her to old business associates, joking, "Here's our walking bank account." The laughter that followed cut deeper than any knife. Evelyn smiled politely, but inside she felt a storm brewing. She had always thought her family respected her, but now she wondered if she had been blind all along. That night, as she fought to hold her composure, a man she trusted approached her with a secret from Robert's will, a secret that could change everything. The secret codicil. Evelyn slipped away from the ballroom after the introductions, needing a moment to breathe. She stood near the tall windows, watching the city lights sparkle against the night sky. Her chest still felt heavy from the humiliation of that name tag. How could her own family think such cruelty was funny? As she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, a familiar voice called her name. "Mrs. Carter? Evelyn?" She turned to see Mr. Whitman, Robert's longtime lawyer, standing a few steps away in a sharp gray suit. His kind eyes softened when he saw her shaken expression. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "I'm fine," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just a bit overwhelmed with everything tonight." Mr. Whitman hesitated, glancing toward the bustling ballroom before lowering his voice. "I couldn't help but notice that name tag." Evelyn sighed. Apparently, it was meant as a joke. "A cruel one," he said firmly. Robert would have been furious. At the sound of her husband's name, Evelyn felt a lump rise in her throat. Robert had always been protective, always quick to stand up for her dignity. He would never have tolerated such disrespect. Mr. Whitman looked around once more, then reached into his inner jacket pocket. "There's something I've kept for a long time. Something Robert insisted I hold until the moment came when you truly needed it. He pulled out a sealed envelope and placed it in her trembling hands. Evelyn frowned, her fingers tracing the familiar neat handwriting of her husband across the front. "What is this?" she whispered. "A codicil," Mr. Whitman explained softly. "An addition to Robert's will. He didn't want you to know about it unless circumstances demanded it. He hoped it would never be necessary." Evelyn carefully opened the envelope. The legal language was complex, but the meaning became clear as she read. Her heart pounded. The document stated that any descendant of Robert and Evelyn who publicly humiliated her would forfeit their inheritance immediately. Their share would either be redistributed or given back to Evelyn herself. Evelyn's eyes widened. "Why didn't he tell me?" Mr. Whitman's voice softened. "Because he wanted your children and grandchildren to treat you with genuine respect, not out of fear of losing money. He told me, if they can't love Evelyn for who she is, then they don't deserve what I've built." Her eyes blurred with tears. Robert had seen this possibility long before she had. He had known their son's weakness for money. He had prepared for this very moment. Evelyn folded the codicil carefully and returned it to Mr. Whitman. "And what happens now?" "That depends on you," he replied. "The choice is yours to enforce it or to wait. But I must tell you, Evelyn, after what I witnessed tonight, you already have grounds." Evelyn looked back toward the ballroom, where laughter echoed and glasses clinked. Somewhere in that crowd, her son and daughter-in-law were likely congratulating themselves for their little joke. They had no idea they were playing with their own future. For the first time all evening, Evelyn felt something stronger than shame. She felt power stirring inside her. Quiet, steady power. "I'm not going to use it yet," she said firmly. "I want to see just how far they will go." Mr. Whitman nodded in approval. "Then be watchful. Their true colors will show soon enough." Evelyn squared her shoulders and walked back into the ballroom. The name tag still pressed against her chest, but it no longer weighed her down. Now it was a reminder, a warning of what she was about to uncover. But only days later, Thomas and Rachel's next demand for money would test her patience and push her closer to revealing the truth. The endless requests. The morning after the wedding, Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, still wearing her robe. In front of her lay the name tag she had brought home. Its elegant calligraphy mocked her, spelling out the cruel words she would never forget, "The old lady who's paying for everything." She touched the card with her fingertips, imagining what Robert would have said if he had seen it. He would have torn it in half and scolded Thomas for allowing such humiliation. Instead, Evelyn was left alone to wonder if her son and his wife had always seen her this way, or if grief had blinded her to the truth. Her phone buzzed on the table. It was Rachel. Evelyn considered ignoring it, but answered with a careful tone. "Good morning, Evelyn." Rachel's voice was bright, too bright. "Wasn't the wedding beautiful? Sophie and Mark were so happy, and of course, none of it would have been possible without you." Evelyn pressed her lips together. She knew where this was going. Rachel continued, her voice softening into that syrupy sweetness Evelyn had come to recognize. "Actually, that's why I'm calling. Mark's parents were supposed to cover the honeymoon, but his father's business is struggling and they've had to cancel. Sophie is devastated. She's always dreamed of Bali. Would you consider helping them?" Evelyn's grip on the phone tightened. She remembered the $45,000 she had already spent on the wedding venue and catering. She thought about the cars she had bought for both Sophie and Daniel when they turned 18, the vacations she had funded, the renovations she had paid for in Thomas and Rachel's home. Her voice came out calm but firm. "I'll think about it, Rachel. I'll let you know tomorrow." The pause on the other end told her Rachel had not expected hesitation. "Oh, well, the flights do need to be booked soon for the best rates," Rachel added quickly. "I understand," Evelyn replied, ending the call. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes drifting toward the hallway closet. Something stirred inside her. She rose, opened the closet door, and pulled out a large box filled with old files. Sitting on the floor, she began sorting through years of bank statements, check stubs, and receipts. One by one, the numbers told their story. $30,000 for a kitchen remodel, $50,000 for a new roof and furniture, another $20,000 for tuition support, thousands more for trips, clothes, and parties. Evelyn's breath caught when she realized the total. Over the past 3 years, she had given Thomas and Rachel nearly $250,000. The weight of it pressed down on her chest. How had she not noticed sooner? Was it because she had wanted to feel needed after Robert's death, or because she had believed her son's words when he told her she was just helping the family? As Evelyn sat surrounded by the evidence of her own generosity, her phone buzzed again. This time she let it ring. The box of papers in front of her was the truth, and it was uglier than she wanted to admit. And just as Evelyn was beginning to see clearly, a knock at the door would bring her grandson Lucas, and with him, a revelation that would shake her even further. The loyal grandson. A soft knock echoed through Evelyn's house that afternoon, pulling her away from the piles of financial papers spread across her living room floor. She quickly gathered them back into the box and shoved it into the closet before opening the door. There stood Lucas, tall and broad-shouldered at 21, with his grandfather's steady eyes. He gave her a quick hug, his voice warm and genuine. "Grandma, are you okay?" "I've been texting you since yesterday." Evelyn smiled faintly. "I'm fine, just tired after the wedding." Lucas stepped inside, glancing around as if checking whether she truly was all right. She busied herself in the kitchen, setting the kettle on the stove. He followed her, pulling out a chair at the small wooden table. "I wanted to apologize for yesterday," he began. "The name tag, the way people laughed about it, it wasn't right. A lot of us noticed. I should have said something." Evelyn paused, the teapot in her hand. She felt her throat tighten. "You noticed?" "Of course," Lucas said, frowning. "It was humiliating. I don't know why Dad and Mom thought that was funny." Evelyn sat across from him, touched by his honesty. "It isn't your responsibility to correct your parents." Lucas leaned forward, determination flashing in his eyes. "Maybe not, but it is my responsibility to stand up for what's right. Grandma, they've changed. Since Grandpa died, it's all about money. Your money." Her heart sank. "What do you mean?" Lucas hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Last week I overheard them talking about this house. Dad said it was too big for you alone and they should convince you to move into Sunrise Acres, the retirement home. He talked about selling the house while the market is hot." Evelyn froze. Her house was more than walls and a roof. It was her sanctuary, filled with memories of Robert and the life they had built together. The thought of her son scheming to push her out made her stomach churn. The kettle whistled, breaking the heavy silence. Evelyn poured the steaming water over 2 tea bags and set 1 cup in front of Lucas. He reached out, placing his hand gently over hers. "Are you sure you're okay, Grandma?" She looked into his kind eyes, seeing not greed but concern. For the first time in years, she felt safe to speak her mind. "I'm better than okay, Lucas. I think I'm finally starting to see things clearly." Lucas tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Evelyn smiled faintly, though inside her heart was racing with new resolve. "Just that it's time for some changes. Big ones." They sipped their tea in silence, and Evelyn studied her grandson. She wondered if his kindness was permanent, or if, like his parents, the seeds of entitlement only waited for the right moment to grow. She prayed he was truly different, but deep inside, a cold clarity settled over her grief. She would no longer be blind. From now on, she would watch, listen, and decide who truly deserved the legacy Robert had left behind. That decision would come sooner than expected, because the very next family brunch would turn into a public test of Evelyn's courage. The public showdown. 3 days after the wedding, Evelyn debated whether to attend the post-wedding brunch Thomas and Rachel were hosting at their country club. She didn't want another scene, but a part of her needed to know whether the name tag incident had been a one-time cruelty or if it truly showed how her family saw her. In the end, curiosity won. Evelyn dressed in a cream-colored pantsuit, simple but elegant, the kind Robert used to say made her look regal. She drove to the Oakwood Country Club with her head held high. The private dining room was already buzzing when she entered. Sophie and her new husband Mark sat at the head of the table, smiling politely. Lucas waved from across the room, and his presence steadied her nerves. Evelyn took her seat beside Mark's parents, who greeted her kindly but seemed unsure where to place their eyes. The brunch began pleasantly enough. Plates of fruit, pastries, and eggs were served. Guests exchanged stories from the wedding, and for a short while, Evelyn allowed herself to feel normal again. Then Rachel stood up, clinking her glass. "We just want to thank everyone for being here today," she said with a broad smile. "Sophie and Mark's wedding was so beautiful, and we couldn't have done it without all of you. But of course, a very special thanks goes to Grandma Evelyn, who has been unbelievably generous." All eyes turned toward Evelyn. She gave a small, polite nod. Rachel's smile widened. "And we're thrilled to share that Evelyn will also be gifting Sophie and Mark their dream honeymoon to Bali." There was scattered applause around the table. Evelyn's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Her stomach dropped. She had promised no such thing. She set her cup down carefully, keeping her voice even. "This is the first I'm hearing of it." The room went silent. Sophie's eyes darted nervously between her grandmother and her mother. Mark stared at his plate. Rachel gave a brittle laugh. "Oh, come now. We talked about it yesterday. You said you'd think about it." "Yes," Evelyn said calmly, "and I am still thinking." Thomas leaned in, his whisper loud enough for all to hear. "Mom, don't make a scene. We've already told them they can book the trip." Evelyn straightened in her chair. A hush fell over the table. For the first time, she felt the thread of patience inside her snap. "I don't recall agreeing to pay for a honeymoon to Bali," she said firmly, her voice carrying through the room. "Mark's parents were originally planning to cover this, were they not?" Mark's father shifted uncomfortably. "We've had some business setbacks," he mumbled. "I understand," Evelyn replied kindly. "But it is not appropriate to publicly volunteer someone else's money without their agreement." She looked directly at Rachel. "Don't you think?" Rachel's face flushed, her smile finally cracking. "But you can afford it," she hissed under her breath. "My finances are not up for discussion," Evelyn replied calmly, pushing her chair back. She turned to Sophie and Mark, her voice softening. "I wish you both every happiness. I'd be glad to contribute something toward a honeymoon within your means, but we'll discuss that privately." With that, she stood, smoothing her jacket. "Enjoy your brunch, everyone." Lucas immediately rose from his chair. "I'll walk you out, Grandma." Together they left the dining room, whispers buzzing behind them. Evelyn's hands trembled as she reached for her car keys, but Lucas caught her hand. "That took courage," he said gently. Evelyn took a deep breath, the air outside sharp in her lungs. For the first time she had stood her ground in public, and it had felt strangely freeing. But Thomas was not about to let her defiance go unanswered. That very evening he would arrive at her home, angry and determined to regain control. Breaking point. The sun was just beginning to set when Evelyn heard the crunch of tires in her driveway. She peeked through the window, and her heart sank. It was Thomas. His car door slammed shut, and moments later he was pounding on her front door. Evelyn steadied herself before opening it. Thomas barged in without waiting for an invitation, his face red with anger. "What the hell was that performance at the brunch?" he demanded, pacing like a restless animal. "Do you have any idea how you embarrassed me and Rachel in front of everyone?" Evelyn closed the door calmly. "I didn't embarrass anyone. I simply corrected a lie. You had no right to announce a gift I never promised." Thomas spun around, his eyes narrowing. "You've been poisoning Lucas against us, haven't you? He's been siding with you ever since the wedding." At that moment, Lucas stepped out from the kitchen where he had been waiting. His tall frame filled the doorway, and his voice was calm but firm. "I don't need anyone to poison me, Dad. I see what's happening for myself." Thomas's face darkened. "Stay out of this, Lucas. This is between your grandmother and me." "No," Evelyn said firmly. "If we're going to have this conversation, Lucas stays. I'm tired of secrets and manipulations. Everything should be said out loud." For a moment, Thomas looked startled. His mother had never spoken to him like this before. He collected himself, his voice shifting into a smooth, practiced tone. "Mom, listen. We're just trying to help you. You're not young anymore, and handling money at your age can be confusing. Rachel and I only want what's best for you." Evelyn's lips tightened. "I am 65, not 95. My mind is sharp, and I am perfectly capable of handling my own affairs. What you want is control over my finances, not to help me." Thomas's false smile vanished. His voice rose. "So what? You're cutting us off because of one stupid joke at the wedding? After all we've done for you?" Evelyn felt a cold steadiness settle inside her. "What you've done for me? Thomas, I've paid for your renovations, your vacations, your children's cars, your parties, your daughter's wedding. I've given more than I ever should have, and yet it's never enough." Lucas crossed his arms, watching his father with disappointment in his eyes. "You treat Grandma like a bank, not like a person." "Quiet!" Thomas snapped, his voice shaking with fury. He turned back to Evelyn. "If you don't let us help manage your money, you're going to waste it all. Dad would never forgive you." Evelyn's voice softened, but every word carried weight. "Your father left me exactly what he wanted me to have. His estate was not meant to be your piggy bank, and from this moment on, I will be making my own decisions." Thomas stared at her as if he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. He grabbed his coat and stormed toward the door. "This isn't over, Mom." Not by a long shot. The house fell quiet again as the door slammed behind him. Evelyn let out the breath she had been holding. Lucas came to her side. "Grandma, that was incredible." She gave a tired smile. "No, Lucas. It was necessary." For the first time, she felt the weight of years lift from her shoulders. But Thomas wasn't finished. At Evelyn's upcoming birthday dinner, he would make a bold move to strip her of control, and in that moment, Robert's secret codicil would finally come to light. The codicil unleashed. Evelyn's 66th birthday arrived on a crisp autumn evening. She had almost canceled the dinner Thomas and Rachel insisted on attending, but Lucas convinced her otherwise. "It's time they see you on your terms, Grandma," he said with quiet conviction. Her home was warm and welcoming, the dining table set with simple elegance. A few of Robert's old friends joined, including Mr. Whitman. Sophie and Mark came too, carrying a bouquet of flowers, their smiles shy but genuine. When Thomas and Rachel finally walked in, their greetings were stiff, their smiles stretched too wide. Evelyn noticed Rachel's eyes darting around the house, as if already calculating what it might be worth. Dinner began with small talk, but Evelyn sensed the tension building. Thomas kept glancing at Rachel, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Finally, as the cake was brought out, Thomas cleared his throat and rose from his chair. "Before we move on, I want to say something important," he announced, his voice carrying through the room. "Rachel and I have been worried about Mom lately. She's been making unusual financial choices, isolating herself, and we feel it's time to consider a power of attorney arrangement for her protection." The room fell silent. Evelyn's hand froze on the knife poised over the cake. Lucas stood instantly. "Dad, are you serious? She doesn't need your control. She's fine." "She's funding a bookstore," Thomas shot back, his voice sharp. "In this economy, and refusing to downsize when it's the logical choice. That's not fine. That's reckless." Rachel nodded in agreement, her face a mask of false concern. "We only want what's best for her." Mr. Whitman placed his coffee cup gently on the table. "That's a serious suggestion, Thomas. Do you have proof of diminished capacity? Because what I see is a woman managing her life perfectly well." Thomas bristled. "You don't understand. She's always relied on Dad, then me, to handle big financial decisions. Now suddenly she's acting irrational." "Irrational?" Evelyn repeated, her voice calm but steady. She laid the knife down. "What you call irrational, I call independent. I am not incapable, Thomas. I'm simply no longer willing to be treated like a bank." Thomas's face flushed dark red. "So what? You're just cutting us off? After everything we've done for you?" Evelyn met his eyes. "After everything I have done for you, I am finally standing up for myself." Before Thomas could answer, Mr. Whitman cleared his throat. "Actually, Thomas, there is something your father foresaw. Something he put in writing before he passed." All eyes turned to him. Slowly, he reached into his jacket and withdrew a familiar envelope. Evelyn's heart pounded as she recognized it. The codicil, Mr. Whitman unfolded the paper and spoke clearly. Robert Carter added this codicil to his will. It states that any descendant who humiliates or disrespects Evelyn or attempts to control her against her wishes forfeits their inheritance. Permanently. The silence that followed was absolute. Rachel's face drained of color. Thomas's mouth opened, but no words came out. Evelyn's voice broke the stillness. "Yes, Mr. Whitman. I want it enforced." Thomas collapsed back into his chair, his hands trembling. Rachel whispered desperately, "All of it?" "Yes," Mr. Whitman said firmly. "All of it." Lucas reached for Evelyn's hand under the table, giving it a reassuring squeeze. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt free. With Thomas and Rachel disinherited, Evelyn could finally begin a new chapter, one built not on money or fear, but on respect, love, and her own independence. A new legacy. 1 year later, Evelyn Carter stood in the doorway of Chapter 1, the little bookstore her grandson Lucas had finally opened downtown. The building, a converted Victorian with tall windows and creaky wooden floors, glowed with soft light from inside. Evelyn paused for a moment, breathing it all in. The rows of neatly arranged books, the smell of coffee drifting from the small cafe corner, and the laughter of children gathered near the reading nook. Lucas spotted her from behind the counter and waved. His eyes lit up the way Robert's once had when he spoke about something he loved. Evelyn's heart swelled with pride. She had helped fund his dream, but the bookstore was all Lucas's vision, and it was thriving. "Grandma," Lucas called as she stepped inside, "you came just in time. We're testing out the new story circle today." Evelyn laughed softly. "I wouldn't miss it." On the wall of the children's section hung a bright mural Evelyn herself had painted, a forest with hidden animals tucked among the trees, something she never would have imagined doing just a year ago. Twice a week she led story time here, surrounded by eager young faces who listened with wide eyes as she read fairy tales aloud. It was a joy she hadn't known she was missing. Her granddaughter Sophie soon entered, pushing a stroller with a tiny baby girl. "Grandma," Sophie smiled, her cheeks flushed with happiness. "I want you to meet Roberta." Evelyn bent over the stroller, her eyes filling with tears as she looked at the infant. "Hello, little one," she whispered, brushing a fingertip against the baby's soft hand. Sophie had named her daughter after Robert. It was a gesture Evelyn would never forget. Their bond had grown stronger since the codicil was revealed. Sophie had admitted her shame for not defending her grandmother at the wedding, and slowly she had rebuilt her relationship with Evelyn. This time, not out of obligation, but love. Not everyone had changed. Thomas and Rachel had tried unsuccessfully to contest the codicil. When the courts upheld it, they moved to Florida, bitter and angry, sending only the occasional stiff Christmas card. Evelyn no longer felt the same ache when thinking of them. They had made their choices, and she had made hers. Now her days were filled with color again. She had reconnected with old friends, started painting, and even traveled abroad. On a senior tour in Italy, she had met Claude, a widower with kind eyes and a dry wit, who now called her every Sunday without fail. Life, she realized, still held surprises, even after loss. As she looked around the bookstore, Evelyn felt something deep in her chest, a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. This was her family now. Not perfect, not without flaws, but real. Lucas working hard to build something lasting. Sophie starting a new life as a mother, a baby whose future stretched ahead like an unwritten book. "Grandma?" Lucas's voice brought her back. He stood with Sophie at the counter, the baby nestled in her arms. "We were just talking about expanding, adding writing workshops for teens. What do you think?" Evelyn smiled, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "I think this is exactly where we're supposed to be." The woman once mocked as the old lady who's paying for everything had become the matriarch who built something far greater, a legacy of love, respect, and new beginnings.